Michaela, this is such a thrill to have you on this Zoom interviewing the wonderful Anthony Albanese. As your federal member of parliament and someone who is so proud of you, I'm going to take over at the start to ask you a question. When you introduce yourself to Anthony, can you tell him about the awards that you've won recently? Because they're pretty impressive.
Yeah, sure. So I had the wonderful honour of being one of the VCE leader finalists. So out of six students in all of Victoria, I won a VCE leadership award, which was really exciting. And then recently, thank you. And then recently at my school, I won the Ample Best All-Rounder award, which was really great honour.
And what school are you at?
Frankston High School.
Frankston High School? Well, I know where that is.
You do. You've been to Frankston many
times.
And Michaela and I have met each other quite a while ago. She's part of I call them the Environmental Defenders. I know that's not their actual title, but the environmental group at Frankston High School, is part of her leadership.
Fantastic.
And she was also Frankston's Young Citizen of the Year in 20. The years have all morphed for me. Was it 2020?
Yes, it was.
For 2020. So she's an incredibly impressive young woman. You're participating in her own series of amazing interviews with people. I have done one with her and she didn't take no for an answer until I could find a time in your incredibly busy schedule.
There you go. Parliament's sitting, so if the bells ring...
No problem.
We have to run.
Yeah.
So now that I've taken over, Michaela, I'm going to let you ask the federal leader of the opposition your questions.
Thank you. So I'll keep it quick for you because obviously you're a very busy guy. But I do have a challenge for you, Anthony. And my challenge is for you to try not to mention or refer to Scott Morrison or the federal Liberal and National Party within your answers.
I'm quite happy to pretend that they don't exist.
Awesome. All right. So then I'll get started then. So my first question for you is, where do politicians, particularly those at the top levels like yourself and the Prime Minister, get the most recent and up-to-date information about things like climate change? Do you make substantial use of the Bureau of Meteorology and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change?
We certainly do, in terms of speaking for myself, because I'm not allowed to mention that Voldemort figure that you raised. But the IPCC latest report, for example, had a really good summary, frankly, for decision makers as well, that I read. So the full volumes of the report, of course, required a small van to transport. But there was, I think it was, around about 100 pages that you could read, and it was very readable, easy to explain. I have a bit of an advantage in that I was the environment and climate change spokesperson for the Labor Party way back when you were maybe not even in primary school, in 2000, from 2005 through to 2007. And indeed, I attended a couple of the conference of the parties, the one in Montreal, which is where Kyoto's ratification ticked over the number of countries, so it came into effect. Mm-hmm. And Bill Clinton's speech there was a highlight. And then in Nairobi the following year. So I was the shadow minister, so not part of the formal negotiations, but I was able to participate in that process and to engage not just with other government representatives from different countries, but business as well, and non-government organisations, environmental groups. There's a big program of people coming and giving talks and participation. I found it quite incredible to have the opportunity to be able to do that. And that got me on top of a lot of the languages and the way that the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change works.
So obviously from your
been a bit of flux.
Yeah, so obviously from your past, you were very active within the environment. And as you mentioned, you read the IPCC report. Were you as disappointed as I was to see that Australia was ranked last out of 200 countries? And do you think that the Labor government and yourself are passionate about bringing us up in those ranks and making more significant changes?
Well, I was disappointed, but not surprised.
Yeah. Yes.
The coalition when I went to COP, see, I'm not mentioning that other person, but when John Howard was Prime Minister at that time, I just remember coming back and saying to people in Australia, look, this is the way Australia is regarded. We haven't ratified the Kyoto Protocol, and that is just absurd. And I moved a private member's bill on the 14th of February. I remember when it came in because it was Valentine's Day in 2006, I think, was when it came into effect. And we ran a campaign on, we did a big love heart with Love the Planet campaign that we launched to coincide with that Valentine's Day. And Australia now, unfortunately, has drifted back into the same situation. We are regarded as pariahs. The idea of Australia not participating, the sort of rhetoric that you hear just doesn't wash with the serious debate which is out there. And the real tragedy is that we have so much to gain from action on climate change. We're particularly vulnerable, our continent, to the impact of climate change, droughts, fires, floods, but we also have so much to gain because we can be a renewable energy superpower for the world.
Yeah, definitely. So as you said, Australia is known as being pariahs in their action against climate change. And for someone who is only 18 years of age and got a long life ahead of me, I can be very concerned for what my future is going to look like. The climate is changing, tropical deforestation is rife, and the world's oceans are full of plastic, just to name a few problems. If you were to become Prime Minister, in large part, my future is in your hands because you and your cabinet will be responsible for decisions that will determine the Australian response to a significantly changing world. Will a Labor government led by you give me hope for a better future? What sort of actions do you think you would put in place?
Well, the first thing we do is participate in a constructive way in that global debate. We recognise that Australia alone can't act, but together with the rest of the world, and particularly with the industrialised world, it's the industrialised nations that created the problem in the atmosphere. And it is up to us to show leadership as well. And I think there is so much to gain. And even if you didn't believe in climate change, one of the things about this is, even if you didn't think it was real, action, the sort of action to reduce emissions that will reduce pollution and lead to a cleaner environment and lead to lower energy prices and lead to more job creation would make sense anyway. Mm-hmm. Take the shift to electric vehicles. That means less particulates in the air that cause all sorts of issues, asthma, cause all sorts of problems for people's lungs, all of that. So it would make sense to transform our transport sector as well as other sectors as well. And the same goes for shipping, aviation fuel. The same goes for use of public transport that can function properly. just as action on renewables. The reason why we have the fastest take-up of renewables is, in spite of government action, people recognise that you put solar panels on your roof, you have cheaper electricity. And I think it's a real challenge, but it's an exciting time as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And the big job I've wanted, the only portfolio I ever asked for was I did ask to get the environment and climate change portfolio all those years ago.
Can I add something for you, Michaela? Because I know just a local example, right? And I know that you mentioned plastics in the ocean, and that's something that you and the students at Frankston High School have been very concerned about, and campaigning for single-use plastics and recycling at the school. And you probably know this, Michaela, but there's a great example in our community, a company called Replas, which takes plastic bags and turns them into park benches and footpaths and balustrades. And that, I think, is the exciting future that an Anthony Albanese Labor government, and like me as your local member, would be supporting, because there's great jobs for really smart people like you who want to be scientists. There's great jobs for people who are likely to be the manufacturers. And there's great jobs for people like you who are really care about the environment and want to work in a business that helps the environment, to work in the office and in the PR and in the admin. And it builds Australia's manufacturing base. So there's the excitement and the hope for you about what a federal government that believes in reducing emissions and saving the planet can actually achieve.
Yeah, definitely.
In our community.
And to build on what you were saying, Peter, about plastics, that was my next question. So science has concluded that microplastics are now in the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. So it's infiltrated every part of our life. So on average, we eat approximately a credit card's worth of plastic, each week, which is quite disturbing to find out, right? So research is ongoing in terms of what this means to human health, but early studies are suggesting that chemicals are likely leaching out of these plastics and are infiltrating our bodies to a detrimental effect. So if plastics are no doubt important in our daily lives, as obviously it's within everything that we do, there are alternatives that are getting better, and regulation of plastics that needs to be stronger. Would your government commit to developing a management strategy that reduces plastic waste in our society to a significant degree?
Absolutely. We need to look at all of the areas where there's waste, all of the areas where there's environmental degradation, and plan the shift. It requires government leadership. It's the people have moved, particularly younger people. And when plastic bag use was raised and the idea of banning single-use plastic bags in supermarkets, etc., and here in Campbell was the first place to introduce the ban, people were like, oh no, that'll be terrible. Guess what? The world hasn't ended. People have dealt with it. They've changed their behaviour, and as a result, there's less rubbish around, less waste, and better environment. So one of the things that I think government can really do is to explain to people, and through doing modelling, doing economic forecasts about how good environmental policy is good economic policy, how listening to science and responding to science saves money. It's good in and of itself. We should listen to science and respect it. But we have enormous opportunity in this country. I think it's, we're located in the fastest growing region of the world in human history, just to our north. And that presents a huge opportunity for us to develop our ideas through science, commercialise them, spread them, and for us to really benefit from that as well.
Definitely.
Now, and you sorry, Michaela, I'm going to interrupt you. I have to be the baddie, right, because we are actually in Parliament, and I know that it's, nearly 6 o'clock at night, and but for us Parliament keeps going for another hour and a half or so. Mm-hmm. So my bad job right now is to say we're going to have to wrap up in a minute. So make the most of this last little bit. Yeah. Because if I leave him at it, Anthony will talk to you about this issue that he cares about so deeply for hours, and then I'll get in trouble.
Yeah, no problem. I've just got 2 more questions for you.
Where we go?
I've got 2 more questions for you, Anthony. So many people seem to be disconnected from politics, including most people my age. This is worrying given that when people vote, this means they could be voting for people that do not truly represent their views. There is also the media factor who seem to favour negative news when it comes to politicians, as you've probably experienced yourself. At my school, we pick up little bits of information about politics here and there, but we've never had the ability to gain a full understanding of the Australian political system. I know people who want action on climate change, but their political beliefs have not necessarily represented that sentiment. Is there a way to improve people's engagement within politics?
I think you're doing it right now.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, there's no shortcut for getting engaged. It's one in which we have a responsibility to reach out and to be prepared to do things like this. You have a responsibility to talk about what you've done here. The fact that you're able to participate in this and that people are willing to. And I think a whole lot of politicians would be prepared to participate. I certainly think Labor people are prepared to engage. One of the things that attracts me to politics is that I like people. It seems like an obvious thing to say, but not all my colleagues in the Parliament, I think, are in that boat. Some don't like the engagement. One of the difficulties with COVID has been it's been difficult to get out and to have that outreach and to visit places like Frankston, where I've visited many times. But it's a great privilege to go to. I went to. Where was the football club we went to?
The Pines. You went to the Pines Football Club.
A little while ago and talked to people there. And I've been to coffee shops in Frankston near the station there with Peter. I opened Peter's office there. But just getting out and just talking with people and engaging. Democracy is really precious. And one of the things I say, regardless of what people's views are, whether they're Labor or Liberal or a minor party, I encourage people, young people particularly, to get engaged and to participate as well in civil society. It's not just about parties. It could be an NGO or the Australian Conservation Foundation or the local, Frankston Rotary Club. The more people participate, the better off we are. I think one of the things about COVID, I hope that is a legacy, is that it's been a real reminder of how important society is and that engagement with each other.
Yeah, definitely. And, Michaela, the other thing I'll add to that, I know I told you we didn't have much time, but I like to talk too, though, is it is one of the privileges, I think, and the responsibilities of the job that I've got and Anthony's got, but to get out to meet young people and to let them know that we're real people too, and make people like you feel comfortable to ask me to arrange an interview with the man who's running to become the next Prime Minister of Australia if he gets elected, and that makes me really proud of you, but it makes me proud of the job that I do. And I think that that's an important part of getting young people engaged, is making sure people know that they actually can talk to the people who want to represent them and be their voice, but also, run the country for their benefit.
Yeah, awesome. And I know you're short on time, so I've just got one last question for you, Anthony.
Bring it home.
Sometimes when a lot of us watch Question Time, we will see politicians yelling at each other, and they don't often have a nice debate or conversation like we have right here, and we've clearly communicated the information that we want to get across. And when this behaviour happens, often this behaviour is in a manner that would not be considered acceptable in many other areas of society. In fact, people would likely lose their job if they acted in a similar way. Why do you think politicians are able to get away with this behaviour? And further, do you think it is appropriate to role model such behaviour in terms of attracting the right people to the job in the future?
Well, sometimes, of course, what you see is the adversarial aspect. Before we spoke, I just gave a speech in the Parliament about Mr Amos, who was murdered, an MP in the UK. The speaker after me was a government minister. It was a very respectful debate. And a whole lot of the time, most of the time, overwhelmingly, there's respectful debate in the Parliament. Sometimes it's adversarial. It's a contest of ideas. And the rules are always stacked in favour of the government. So people are passionate about their ideas. I'm passionate about Australia going to the conference in Glasgow with a net zero by 2050 commitment and with a genuine plan to get there. And I sometimes you can get frustrated because you get to ask a question but you don't actually get to have the debate. So one of the things we need to do is to reform Parliament so there is more opportunity to have genuine debate. You will see, for example, in Parliament regularly under this term, it didn't happen previously. It happened occasionally, but now on a regular basis, government ministers just moved that members be no longer heard. Yeah. And that's a strategy that this Prime Minister has of not having debate, and that causes frustration. And so various tactics have to be tried to get the point across in a different way. But you're right about some of it being a turn-off. I completely accept that. But sometimes when you're passionate about ideas, about making a difference to the country, then there will be passion shown through the... Just a quick
follow-up on that. Obviously, you said that you're passionate about...
Follow-up?
Obviously, you said that you were passionate...
A supplementary question.
Obviously, you said you're passionate about going to Glasgow for Australia and getting us to that net zero emissions by 2050. You and I have both read the IPCC report. Do you think that that is enough? Do you think there's a way to speed up that action? Because sometimes, especially with all the benefits, the economic benefits and the environmental benefits for our future, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're doing enough and we're not doing it fast enough. Do you think that we can achieve it faster?
Well, we're certainly not doing enough at the moment. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. And there's no question as well that you look at projects like, just to name one, Sun Cable, the largest solar farm in the world, will be exporting energy to Singapore. Mm-hmm. It's just an example of what we can achieve. And I'm passionate about being in government and being able to really make a difference. So net zero by 2050 is a global target that's been agreed. Mm-hmm. I think that's important that we be a part of that process. But I think also it's important that we take up every opportunity there is to create jobs at the same time as we're lowering emissions and protecting the environment. And if we do that, if we're smart about it, we can be proud about our efforts at the end, and hopefully then the next generation, such as yourself, can step in and take things to the next level as well.
All right, Michaela, I'm going to have to wrap us up here. I just want to say two things. I'm really proud of you. You've done this interview like an absolute professional, which I knew that you would do, and you've done yourself, Frankston High School, and all of our community proud. Thank you to Anthony for taking time out in a crazy busy time, and I know we weren't allowed to mention the person who shall not be named, but you know that we're in Parliament this week, you know, fighting for the government to actually commit to net zero by 2050 and to have a proper plan, and Anthony's taken time out to talk to you, so I'm pretty chuffed about that. And I'm just going to put in a plug. Kate, my colleague, Kate Thwaites, the member for Jagga Jagga, and I, in 2019, I think, if not, put in a submission to an inquiry into reforming question time. And you might want to look that up. We put up a bunch of suggestions about how to get better answers and better behaviour in the Parliament.
Awesome, thank you.
And a shout out to Peter too for being a fantastic local member.
Well, thank you to you both for sitting down in your busy schedule and talking to me. I think you guys have provided some insight for our local community and hopefully have cleared some things up. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Good luck with your exams.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.